Do you think you could identify these 8 lenses purely by examining test charts and seeing sample images? Or better yet, which of these lenses do you think is best? Their prices run from $15,000 or so all the way down to $2,000 per lens. Which would you choose? Does more expensive mean better? Does older mean more characterful? Does sharp mean clinical? Let's explore how much difference lens selection can make to your images. If you're not careful, testing can become subjective. It's possible to submit a lens to a test that highlights its weakness. Conversely, it's possible to omit a test that highlights a lens's strength. It's also possible to make mistakes and attribute them to a lens. There is one thing that we couldn't help though. We didn't have the same focal lengths in all our lenses. Please bear that in mind. Finally, the Thalia only opens to t2.9. We're shooting these tests on a Pix's 12K at 12K. A big thank you to Able Cine for allowing us to test at their Burbank facilities. Their place is awesome and their staff are incredibly helpful. Go say hi if you're in the area. Each lens renders color differently. Some lenses run warm, some run cool. Notably, the Summicron C, Arles, and S4 all exhibit warmth. The Supreme, Zeiss Superspeed, and RE Ultra are all notably cool. It's particularly apparent in a split screen, but it's less so when viewed in isolation. As the warmth or coolness is uniform, it can easily be corrected in post, as shown here. Now all the lenses look the same. Yes, there will still be minor differences, but the gap is narrowing to the point where the aesthetic choice doesn't come down to the lens you choose, but instead is affected by the color grade you create. It's also something you can correct in camera. As a side note, we've found that some cameras run warm, some run cooler. So instead of using preset temps, use a custom white balance that renders a more neutral image in the given lighting. Well, you can do the same thing for your lenses too. Experiment and find a color temp that in combination with your lenses gives the look that you are after. Some lenses have more contrast, some have less. We really enjoyed Cine Daily's comparison of the Arles and Nisi Ores, where he showed the difference in contrast between the two lenses. There are appreciable differences in the contrast a lens can resolve. Low contrast is often a consequence of a lens with greater flare, as veiling or ghosting raises the black level in an image. So it's no surprise that more flare-prone lenses show lower contrast. Please note that this test is at T2, rather than showing each lens wide open. For us, it's more common to use a lens a stop down from wide open. It's also easier to compare lenses that don't have the same maximum aperture. Wide open, some characteristics will get stronger, and in some instances, like on the Zeiss Superspeeds, problems that you've never seen before suddenly appear, where wide open, they exhibit very strong blooming. Every single lens in the test shows excellent, near identical sharpness at t5.6, both center and corner, with 2 exceptions. The Superspeed still had soft corners at t5.6, as did the Arles. That's less surprising on the Superspeeds, a positively ancient lens, but it's more interesting on the Arles. Just to contextualize that, please note how zoomed in we are. The Arles sharpens up very quickly as you move away from the edges. For example, this is the bottom center of the frame. Now, I'd imagine that this is less of a flaw and more of a design choice. A soft fall off in detail around the edge of the frame can make the image more pleasing. Across all the lenses, sharpness decreases the wider the aperture. We'll jump straight to T2, our go-to for comparing these lenses. The S4, Superspeed, and Ultra have noticeably softened by T2, but most lenses are still acceptably sharp. If anything, the increase in chromatic aberration, wide open, is more likely to distract than corner softness. Just going back to the Arles for a moment, it's interesting that it has a similar amount of corner sharpness at T2 and T5.6. Well, that means that the aperture controls center sharpness and depth, but that the lens can still deliver character at both T5.6 and wide open. Closely connected with sharpness is chromatic aberration, because it's typically more dominant in the corners and it too is affected by aperture. Unsurprisingly, the Supreme and Sigma full frame show the least chromatic aberration in this group of lenses. Surprisingly though, the Cooke S4 and Summicron C showed the most chromatic aberration, as shown here in the corners of this high contrast backlit scene. This video is sponsored by Audio, where with our discount code, you can get 70% off an entire year of royalty-free music. We use Audio for all of our music. I'd like to highlight a genuinely useful feature, and that is their phone app.
The homepage features new artists and playlists. That's a great place to start if you don't know what you're looking for yet. If you're out and about, when you've got time to kill, instead of listening to the music you already know, you can explore Audio's library and start building ideas for your next edit. If you're looking for something specific, head to search. You can do all the normal stuff like search through song titles, artists, and keywords, or you can hit this button in the middle. This is Hands AI. It understands the music in Audio's library. You can either describe the kind of song you're looking for or describe the kind of video you're looking to make. Either way, when you find songs you like, mark them as a favorite. Now when you sit down to start editing, instead of starting from zero, you're already ahead. You can get an entire year of Audio Pro for just $60 using our discount code in the description.
Every lens here is at T2 except for the Thalia, which is at T2.9. In fairness to the Thalia, when used on a larger format sensor, like it's designed to be used, the bokeh will naturally feel different, so this isn't a fair appraisal of its character. Now, I love all bokeh. It's all beautiful. The Sigma and Supreme seem to have the smoothest bokeh, but perhaps, and this gets a little bit subjective, it's too smooth. It lacks texture. On the other hand, lenses like the Summicron, Arles, S4, Superspeed, and Ultra have mildly edge-brightened bokeh. This is often found in lenses that have less chromatic aberration correction. When CA is heavily corrected, a consequence is that bokeh becomes smoother. That's why perhaps it's so smooth on the Supreme and Sigma full frame, and the bokeh is more characterful on lenses that exhibited greater corner chromatic aberration. So a small amount of chromatic aberration can actually be a good thing by adding character to bokeh. One thing to note, the S4 bokeh has a very distinctive shape. I think perhaps that's influenced by the shape of the aperture. Some will like that, others won't. What about if you don't want to see flares? Well, first we tested flare resistance by shooting into the sun. They all handle it really well. The sun is just out of frame, directly above. The Summicron and Arles both show small but visible flares. While all of the lenses exhibit some veiling glare, the Arles appears to show the most. What about if you do want to see flares? Next, we went into a dark room and tortured each lens with a bright torch. This test was the one that surprised me the most. By far, the Summicron was my favourite. Its flare was full of pleasing colours, complementary blues, aquas, and subtle greens. It has clearly defined yet delicate shapes, and look how smooth the transition to highlights is. There are no harsh geometric shapes. The ARRI Ultra Primes also had a very strong and beautiful look, but it's a little bit more niche given how green it is. The majority of the other lenses had flares that shifted green. Well, given how flare resistant those lenses were, it's no surprise that their flares were a little bit more anemic. One small observation, the Superspeed, the oldest design present, has lots of small, highly saturated shapes that could be distracting in an image. The other standout here for me was the Arles, which also has a really beautiful flare. Its look isn't as strong as the Summicron, but it has a cooperative design that is both resistant to flare in some scenarios, but also easy to flare in others. And it definitely leans in the Summicron's direction with cooler tones and a pleasant colour palette that would sit better in a wider range of images. Every single one of these lenses is capable of producing an incredible image. You could be chuffed to own or use any of them. But for a moment, let's split hairs and allow me to tell you some of my preferences. I enjoy bokeh that has some texture, just like I enjoy grain in an image. For me, overly smooth bokeh made the background feel separate. I enjoyed lenses like the Summicron, Arles, Ultra, S4 and Superspeed, where the bokeh had more structure and texture, but it wasn't so busy that it distracted from the image. I found that many of the lenses had anemic or boring flares. On the other hand, the Summicron, ARRI Ultra and Arles stood out. Their flare had more character, and I was surprised at how different each was. The Summicron was my favourite, the Arles was in second place. I love the ARRI Ultra, but I can see its aggressive green being more niche. Sharpness was great across the board. Older lenses did show their age, and there was a clear distinction in the corners between lenses that prioritised a clean image, like the Supreme, Sigma and Thalia, and those that favoured more character, like the S4, Summicron and Arles, that seemed to prioritise an aesthetic that showed a soft fall-off at the edges of the frame. What do I use? I own a set of Arles, and I'm sorry, but I've never got my head into saying Arles. I feel like the lenses we tested fall into two categories, with one small exception. The Zeiss Superspeeds are from the 70s, amazing lenses but so unique, I'm going to leave them out for the time being. Group 1. The Supreme, Sigma and Thalia are modern lenses that prioritise a clean look. Perhaps the Tachina Vista Primes would also sit really well in this category. Group 2. The Ultra Primes and Cooke S4s are from the late 90s, and they seem to prioritize character. Beyond the wild flares, they have similar characteristics. The Summicron Cs are from the 2010s, but their heritage comes from the 70s. Well, they also feel at home in this group too. Where do the Arles fit? They go into that second group. It seems that design decisions have been made that prioritize character and aesthetic. That's visible in things like chromatic aberration, focus fall-off, and flare performance. Seeing them in context has helped me to appreciate that they are more characterful than I might have at first thought. If I could have any of the lenses we tested, I think I'd take a set of Summicron Cs. But second hand, a set costs around 50,000, whereas a brand new set of Arles costs under 10. I am very happy with the Arles. They produce a beautiful image, have solid build quality, they're suitable for film and digital, and they look the part. While not perfect, many of their imperfections can actually be leveraged as a desirable feature, and it's hard to argue with their value. What should you take from this? Whatever you want. These are all amazing lenses, and there's no such thing as a perfect lens. Love the lenses you have. Most lenses are capable of making beautiful images. Whatever you have, get out there, make something cool, and have some fun. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and thank you so much for watching.